Welcome to photo editing for beginners. If you've just captured some amazing photos but they don't quite look the way you imagined, you're not alone. The truth is, most professional photographs you see have been edited. But here's the good news. You don't need expensive software or years of experience to make your photos look stunning. In this video, we're going to demystify photo editing and show you the essential techniques that will transform your images from good to great. Whether you're using free software like Lightroom's mobile app, Snapseed, or Adobe Lightroom, the principles we'll cover today apply to all of them. By the end of this tutorial, you'll understand the fundamental editing tools and how to use them confidently. Let's get started. Before we dive into the technical tools, let's talk about what photo editing actually is. Photo editing is not about creating fake images or making something look completely different. Instead, it's about enhancing what's already there. Think of it like developing a photograph in a darkroom. You're bringing out the details, adjusting the mood, and revealing the story that was captured in that moment. There are two main types of editing: global adjustments and local adjustments. Global adjustments affect the entire image, things like brightness, contrast, and color temperature. Local adjustments target specific areas of your photo, like brightening just the sky or adding warmth to a person's face. Most beginners start with global adjustments, and that's exactly where we'll begin. Every photo editing software follows the same basic workflow. First, you import your image. Then, you make adjustments starting with exposure and color. Next, you refine contrast and clarity. Finally, you add any creative touches like saturation or vibrance. Understanding this workflow will help you navigate any editing software confidently. The most important rule in photo editing is this: start with the biggest adjustments and work your way to the smallest details. This prevents you from making conflicting changes and keeps your edits looking natural. A good edit should be invisible, meaning people should see the subject, not the editing. Let's start with exposure, which is the foundation of every edit. Exposure controls how bright or dark your entire image is. If your photo is too dark, increasing exposure will brighten it. If it's too bright, decreasing exposure will darken it. But here's the key: exposure is different from brightness. Exposure adjusts the entire tonal range, while brightness primarily affects the midtones. For most photos, you'll want to start by adjusting exposure first. When adjusting exposure, look at the histogram, that graph showing the distribution of tones in your image. You want the histogram to spread across the entire range without clipping the highlights or shadows too much. In other words, avoid pure white or pure black unless that's your creative intention. After exposure, you might need to adjust the highlights and shadows separately. If your sky is blown out, meaning it's completely white with no detail, you can recover it by reducing the highlights. Similarly, if your foreground is too dark, you can lift the shadows to reveal more detail. These adjustments are incredibly powerful because they let you recover information that might seem lost. Finally, there's brightness and contrast. Brightness is a simple adjustment that makes everything lighter or darker uniformly. Contrast increases the difference between light and dark areas, making your image pop. A common beginner mistake is pushing contrast too far, which makes images look unnatural. A subtle increase in contrast, usually around 10 to 20%, is often all you need. Now let's talk about color, which is where editing becomes really fun. The first color adjustment you should make is white balance. White balance corrects color casts, those unwanted tints that make your image look too blue, too orange, or too green. This usually happens because of different light sources. Indoor tungsten lighting creates warm, orange tones. Fluorescent lights create cool, blue tones. Daylight is neutral. Most editing software has preset white balance options: daylight, cloudy, shade, tungsten, fluorescent, and flash. Start by trying these presets to see which one looks most natural. If none of them are perfect, you can fine-tune using the temperature and tint sliders. Temperature controls the warmth. Moving it left makes the image cooler and bluer. Moving it right makes it warmer and more orange. Tint controls green and magenta shifts. After white balance, you can adjust saturation and vibrance. Saturation increases the intensity of all colors equally. Vibrance is smarter. It increases color intensity while protecting skin tones and preventing oversaturation. For most photos, vibrance is the better choice. A subtle increase of 10 to 20% adds life to your image without making it look artificial. If you want to get creative, you can adjust individual color channels. For example, you might want to make the blues in the sky more vibrant while keeping the greens in the grass natural. This is called HSL editing: hue, saturation, luminance. Hue shifts the color, saturation controls intensity, and luminance controls brightness of specific colors. This is an advanced technique, but once you understand it, you have incredible control over your image. Clarity is one of the most misunderstood editing tools, but it's incredibly powerful. Clarity increases the contrast of midtones, which makes your image look more defined and three-dimensional. A subtle increase in clarity, around 10 to 15%, adds punch to your image. But be careful. Too much clarity makes images look overprocessed and unnatural. Sharpness is different from clarity. Sharpness makes edges more defined, which can make details pop. However, sharpness should be used carefully. A little bit of sharpening makes images look crisp and professional. Too much sharpening introduces artifacts and makes images look harsh. Most editing software applies some sharpening automatically, so you might not need to add much. There's also a tool called texture or dehaze. Texture adds fine details and makes images look more tactile. Dehaze removes atmospheric haze, which is useful for landscape photos taken on hazy days. These tools are subtle but can make a big difference in how your image feels. One important principle: always sharpen last after all your other adjustments. Sharpening should be the final step in your editing workflow. And remember, different types of photos need different amounts of sharpening. A portrait might need less sharpening than a landscape to keep skin looking smooth and natural. Once you've mastered the fundamentals, you can add creative touches. One popular technique is adding a subtle vignette, darkening the edges of your image to draw attention to the center. A vignette should be barely noticeable, usually around 10 to 20%. Another creative tool is split toning, where you add different colors to the highlights and shadows. For example, you might add warm tones to the highlights and cool tones to the shadows. This creates a cinematic, professional look. Split toning is subtle but incredibly effective. You can also experiment with color grading, which is adding a color cast to your entire image for mood and style. A warm color grade makes images feel nostalgic and cozy. A cool color grade makes images feel modern and moody. But remember, color grading should enhance your image, not overpower it. Finally, consider cropping and straightening. Sometimes the best edit is removing distracting elements from the frame. A well-composed crop can transform a mediocre photo into a strong one. And straightening a tilted horizon is often one of the most impactful edits you can make. Let me share some common mistakes beginners make. First, over-editing. It's easy to get excited and push every slider to the maximum. Resist this temptation. The best edits are subtle and natural looking. If you find yourself asking, "Is this edited?" then it's probably edited too much. Second, not using presets as a starting point. Most editing software comes with presets, pre-made adjustment combinations. These are incredible time savers and learning tools. Start with a preset, then fine-tune it for your specific image. This is much faster than starting from scratch. Third, editing on a poorly calibrated screen. If your monitor's colors are off, your edits will look wrong on other devices. Invest in a decent monitor or at least calibrate the one you have. This makes a huge difference in the quality of your edits. Fourth, not backing up your original files. Always keep your original, unedited photos. Editing is non-destructive in most modern software, but it's still good practice to preserve the originals. You might want to re-edit them in the future with new techniques you've learned. Photo editing is a skill that improves with practice. Start with the fundamentals we've covered today: exposure, white balance, contrast, and clarity. Master these and you'll be able to edit any